angry, which I can relate to, especially tonight, with the kind of the day that I've had. But it is, as we mentioned, it is important to understand how we handle anger. Anger is an emotion that God gives to each and every one of us. Even God himself gets angry. Jesus got angry. One case in particular is where he overturned the tables. And as we mentioned last week, he was never out of control. Remember, he went and it said he made a whip. Okay, well, that takes time to do it. And so he went away, he got his thoughts together, and the anger was building inside of him. He was tempted in all ways that we are, yet without sin, which means he did not get to the point of being angry to where he was out of control. So, Paul in Ephesians chapter 4, verse 26 says, "Be angry and do not sin. Was not Abraham our father justified by works when he offered Isaac his son on the altar?" Number 2, there we go. Do not be quick to anger. We talked about that a little bit last week. Proverbs chapter 14 and verse 17 mentions a quick-tempered man acts foolishly, and a man of wicked intentions is hated. Again, we've got to be smart. A quick-tempered man acts foolishly. How many of you have ever gotten mad and you said something that you regretted because you were acting without thinking, right? I think we all have. We all have. But we've all gotten to that point where, we've had enough and we lash out and we end up having to apologize for that, right? Because we went too far. Quick-tempered man acts foolishly. You feel foolish when you do that. When you say something and you're like, what, that really wasn't necessary, and so I'm acting like a fool. Proverbs 14 verse 29, "He who is slow to wrath has great understanding, but he who is impulsive exalts folly." Again in Proverbs 15 verse 18, "A wrathful man stirs up strife, but he who is slow to anger allays contention." Proverbs 16 verse 32, "He who is slow to anger is better than the mighty, and he who rules his spirit than he who takes a city." What is God telling us throughout these Proverbs about being angry? Is he telling us not to be angry at all? What's the focus? Control. That's exactly right. It's about control. Some people, they can't, I shouldn't say they can't, they've got to the point where their behaviors become to where they lose control and they don't know how to rein it in. They can't control it. And they've got away with it for so long that we talked about, I think a couple weeks ago, they use it because they get what they want, right? I'm gonna be angry and I'm gonna demand things and I'm gonna get what I want. And when they get what they want, they develop that behavior. And that behavior can become a habit, right? I'm angry, I get what I want, I'm going to keep being angry. I'm going to keep being angry because I'm going to get what I want. Proverbs 19, "The discretion of a man makes him slow to anger, and his glory is to overlook a transgression." Proverbs 25, verse 28, "Whoever has no rule over his own spirit is like a city broken down without walls." You think God takes this seriously? Over and over. It's like he's reminding us over and over and over. "Do not hasten in your spirit to be angry, for anger rests in the bosom of fools." That's in Ecclesiastes chapter 7 and verse 9. So here the wise man is talking about not being angry. And again, it's to the sense of being out of control. James chapter 1 and verse 19, we go into the New Testament. "So then, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, and slow to speak and slow to wrath. You think a lot of people get that backwards? I think a lot of people get that backwards. We tend to be quick to speak, but slow to listen. Right? I can't tell you how many times, and I've been guilty of this before, where I might be having an argument, and I find myself not really listening to what the other person is saying as much as I'm thinking about what I'm going to say next. And then there's been times where they've been like, no, that's not what I said, or that's not what I meant. Right? And then when they say it again, it's like, oh, right? It's because I wasn't listening. We got to make sure that we listen first. Listen to what the other person is saying, and then speak. You always talk about think before you speak. Sometimes I think we speak before we think. But again, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath. You got to remember, anger brings punishment. Anger brings punishment and repeated suffering. A man of great wrath will suffer punishment, for if you rescue him, you will have to do it again. What do you think that's talking about? What do you think Wise Man's talking about in Proverbs? That if you rescue him, you'll have to do it again.
He doesn't learn anything from his anger.
That's right. Yeah, he does not learn anything from his anger. And when you get him away from that situation, guess what? You're going to have to rescue him again. Because that behavior is still there. Anger that is not remedied proves foolishness. We read that passage a moment ago in Ecclesiastes chapter 7 and verse 9. Anger causes problems with others, and it leads to sin. Proverbs 29 verse 22. An angry man stirs up strife, and a furious man abounds in transgression. What do you think the difference is between being angry and furious? You think there's a difference?
Be angry and start shouting, but then you start fighting.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, you might start raising your voice, but when you get furious, hand motions, and all that stuff. Again, a furious man abounds in transgression. Again, it causes problems, and it does lead to sin. Jim?
Yeah, I kind of think it's furious. Now you're getting out of control.
Yeah.
Is that,
Absolutely. You think about somebody who they're mad at something, right? And they're just mad. All of a sudden they walk up and they punch a wall. Or they take something and they throw it. Right? That we would probably consider that is out of control, but we would consider that they're furious right now. Right? Again, it's out of control. If you're punching things, if you're kicking things, if you're throwing things, you're just out of control. If you're saying things that you shouldn't be saying, again, that's out of control. Now, it is okay for us to be angry. Should we get angry when people take God's name in vain?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
That was the whole deal with the temple.
Yeah. Right.
That's why he trashed the temple.
Right. Right. We need to be angry with sin. God is angry with sin. Jesus was angry with sin. We need to be angry with sin. But we're never going to convict people of their sin. We're never going to convert people if we respond out of control. If we just get to that point of anger that we're out of control, then we're never going to reach anybody. If somebody lies to you and you come back at them with out of control anger, what's that going to do? Right? You're not helping the situation. Right? It's okay to be angry because somebody lied to you, and that is sinful, but you still love the person. We always got to remember that. Hate the sin, love the person. And so we got to make sure that we control that anger. Jim?
Oh, no.
Oh, I thought you...
Now you're kind of thinking negative.
Anger sets a trap for your destruction. Proverbs chapter 22, verse 24. Make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man do not go, lest you learn his ways and set a snare for your soul. What do you think he's talking about there? What happens if you're always around somebody who's angry? You're going to start picking up on it. I think, there's people that I know that I have to be around, a lot, especially at work, and they're always negative. They're always negative. Have you ever been around a negative person so much that now you find yourself thinking negative all the time? Right? It does wear off on you. It does rub off. Right? And so we have this negativity. Now we find ourselves always thinking in the negative. We have somebody that's always complaining and angry. Then we find ourselves feeling that same way. They rub off on us. Anger prevents being righteous before God. As we read there, it says, for the wrath of man does not produce the righteousness of God. We need to have righteous anger. That's the kind of anger that we need to have, righteous anger. Again, did Jesus ever get angry and just yell at those who were attacking him personally? Not even on the cross. But he got angry when it came to truth and righteousness. That's righteous anger. Carol?
It's a good place to see that we know Christ did not sin, and we also see that he was angry. But he was angry about what was done to the temple. He was angry about being wrong about God, people's behavior. But he was not angry about things that was done to him. And that's a big difference in our anger. Are we only angry? Are we ever angry about things that are done with us? Bother us, offend us, upset us? Probably mostly, instead of righteous indignation.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, a lot of times when we're attacked or people, it affects us. We get angry because it affects us. But we don't get angry at things, like people that put down Christians. Well, that's their opinion, Or they take God's name in vain, or they say there is no God. Right? Do we get angry at those things? Or do we just kind of, it is what it is? We should be angry. If somebody is going to take God's name in vain, if they're going to mock God, if they're going to make fun of God, if they're going to say he doesn't exist, does that get you angry, or is it only if it affects you that makes you angry? You see, again, that was the difference between, that was the difference with Jesus, is Jesus got angry when it came to the truth. He did not get angry to the point of confronting or arguing with people that were attacking him personally. Matthew chapter 5, verse 21 and 22. Anger, something we don't think about, can ultimately lead to the destruction of your soul. I say to you that whoever is angry with his brother without a cause shall be in danger of the judgment. You can't get any more straightforward than that. I don't like this person because they looked at me funny. Scott, Russ, y'all look funny all the time. I don't like you guys. Right?
That's not my funny face.
Right. So, but again, it's, if I get angry without a cause, right? It says that you shall be in danger of the judgment. Again, God takes anger very seriously. He's given us this emotion because, it's an emotion that he has. We're made in the image of God. God gets angry. But we have to know how to control that. Sometimes it's not easy. That's why they have anger management classes, because people have a hard time of reining that anger in. They don't know how to control it. Every little thing they get mad at. They don't get their way, they get mad at it. If you don't fix the food I want, I'm going to get mad. If you don't buy me this, I'm going to get mad. Russ?
There is a clause there without a clause. So there is such a thing as a just or righteous cause being angry with your brother. And you can go to Revelations and see where there are people screaming out, "How long, Lord, until you take your vengeance out on those who have spilled our blood?" So it is okay to want righteous vengeance.
Right.
Of course not. The difference is you are not the one to be taking that vengeance up. That's God. And I'm speaking to myself here, trust me. Because
It's hard.
I turn on the news for 5 minutes and I'm like, man, I just want everything to just burn. Just burn all down.
Yeah.
But you have to step back and say that is, everything is in God's purview. And it is God's vengeance, His judgment that matters, not yours. So, and He has given authority to the governing bodies on this earth to seek out justice. And they do a really poor job of it,
Yeah.
admittedly, most times. But it's okay to want justice. And
Sure.
vengeance, but it is the way that it gets done that matters. It is not to be done by your hand. That's not to say that you can't defend yourself if you're being physically assaulted.
Sure.
But,
Yeah.
But you can't, shoot somebody that's in, maybe in your house. They're in my house, they're getting shot.
Right.
They are a threat, so.
Yeah.
yes.
Self-defense. Yes.
That is a
Absolutely.
little bit different.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Very
that's,
good.
that's a whole different discussion.
Yeah.
And Christ does address that. So-
He does. He does. Absolutely. Charlie?
I'm having difficulty with this angry or brother without a cause. It's that something like, I don't like the way he looks, just looking at me makes me mad.
They have, if let's say, the way I look at it is if maybe you say something to me innocently and I take it the wrong way and I don't talk to you about it and now I'm angry at you without discussing it. Like if you send me let's say you send me a text message and I read that text message like, you're being hateful with me when you're really not. So I'm not going to talk to you anymore. I'm not going to have anything to do with you anymore. Until, I mean, that's without a cause, right? Anybody have any thoughts on that? Jim?
Well, in that, it could be just somebody's trying to make a joke and it's a lousy joke.
Yeah.
That happens all the time.
Right.
And the other guy takes it wrong and then whatever. But going back to Russell's, with the self-defense, that's not necessarily anger, that's self-preservation.
Right.
And I got a couple of things here, and then you're talking about God being slow to anger. I was just talking with a friend about, like when God gave the promised land to the Israelites. But first he had to judge the Canaanites for their sin. But that took 400 years for their sin to get to be enough to, he was very slow on that. He was angry, but he had to wait till they got to the certain level of sin.
Right.
So he, took his time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the clue here is the verse before this in Matthew 5:20. But it says 5:21. You have heard that it was said to older generations, do not murder. That's one of the original commandments given to Moses. So this is their justice system. And then he goes on to say, anyone who is angry with a brother will be subjected to judgment. So I think the clause there is you can't take justice for something yourself. That is something that is that God has given to the authorities to do. So that's what it's talking about. But it's okay for you to be mad about it, to use layman's terms.
Yeah.
If somebody murders somebody that you love, it's okay for you to be angry.
Sure.
And to remain angry. So, and to want justice for that.
Absolutely. Bernard?
E. Bowman said one time to me, he said, I don't have to like you and your ways, but I do have to love taking the Lord's name in vain. We a lot of times say, don't take the Lord's name in vain, and we stop. But in the scripture here, it says, you shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not leave him unpunished who takes his name in vain.
Yeah.
So, in my early days, when I was 16, I had a job unloading boxcars, and there was a man that his nickname was GD, because every other word he used the Lord's name in vain. And we said, just stay away from him. We talked to him, we showed him the scripture, he didn't believe it. So God will take care of people like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It's funny, some years ago, working in a motorcycle shop, I was having discussions with a guy that owned the shop. We were talking, and he was raised Jewish and left, and it's a whole other story. But he was talking about, because he knew I was Christian, so he was talking about the language, the foul language going on.
Mm-hmm.
So we had discussions and said, oh, okay, until you get to insulting my Father in heaven, and that's kind of where we got to draw the line.
Right.
And he was respectful on it. Mm-hmm. He was careful. He'd slip once in a while, but he was,
Yeah.
he made a real effort. Just, anyway.
Right. Yeah, and a lot of times, not every time, but a lot of times God's name is taken in vain out of anger. Right? People get mad and they start saying certain things. Again, that, as Bernard pointed out, you take the Lord's name in vain, you're going to have to answer for that. It's serious. And people, it's just a word. It's just a word. It's a word God said, you shall not take in vain, or you're going to be held accountable for it. Ephesians chapter 4, be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath, nor give place to the devil. Do you think the devil feeds off of our anger? Absolutely. Absolutely he does. I mean, that's like prime pickings right there. You're angry, now I'm gonna keep pressing. That's why I think it says, don't let the sun go down on your wrath. If you have a problem with somebody, work it out before the sun goes down. Husbands and wives, make sure before you go to bed, before the sun goes down, you work out whatever differences you have. Because what happens is you let it sit, you start to think, sometimes you start to overthink, and before you know it, now nothing is solved, and you're making matters worse. Let all anger be put away from you. All right. So, why do you think a study on anger is important? Why do you think
Oftentimes, anger is displayed in words that are hurtful or mean or lies or destructive or unkind or something. And of course it can be accelerated into physical hitting or hurting or something like that. But part of our judgment is going to be our words. And so that's why it's important to study about anger. The other word, the one about be angry with your brother without a cause, and the rest of that has to do with, or calling your brother a fool. It has to do with these mental attitudes of putting down, using your words to cheapen the value of a person's soul or their being. Those are words. And it says they'll be in danger of Gehenna or hellfire. Well, that's pretty serious.
Yeah.
So the whole package, trying to answer what you said, why it's important to study that is because we'll see it again in judgment.
Oh, yeah.
We'll hear it again in judgment. And the part about it's because we have a hard time repenting of our anger. We can be sorry we punched a to see ourselves as doing wrong. Generally, we feel so self-justified. Well, I would, but he made me so mad, or something that justifies why we said or did what we did. So it's hard to repent of that if we don't see our wrong. Which, seeing our wrong is necessary in repentance. So it's tough. We've got to know where the red flags are and not be colorblind.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I heard a lot of people talk about this, and I've always told Noah and Eli that I would love to take them over to a third world country so that they can see firsthand the difference. Because when we had the hurricane, you know, and people lost electricity, they got mad. They were angry because they went 2 days without electricity. Or they went 2 or 3 days because they didn't have the internet. Do you know how many people would love it if they had it and only lost it for 2 or 3 days? Right? There's Christians in other countries. They're not complaining about not having electricity. They're not complaining about not having internet. They come to worship in a rundown shack with dirt floors, and sometimes they're sitting on the floor. They walk 2 hours to go to worship. They only get rice and maybe chicken for food. And, you know, we're sitting here complaining because we went 2 days without electricity, right? We get angry. I understand, you know, we kind of get used to the luxury of America, but they legit got angry because it was like their life is over. And again, you know, our priorities sometimes get out of whack. Jim?
Yeah, just what you're talking about. There's
Those preachers we used to support in Panama, you know, they would build their churches. They got a few cinder blocks. They put a few more on the wall. They hadn't gotten to the roof yet. Yep, it's beans and rice, breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you see it, you know, it kind of, because it's over there. Those things happen over there. And so we don't see it on a regular basis here. Sometimes we'll see it on TV, but we can quickly turn the channel, right? I don't want to see that. That's depressing. Well, that's life for some people. And so I think some of the things that we get angry at, we need to take a step back and think, you know what? You know, does this have anything to do with the Lord? Does this have anything to do with righteousness? You know, or is this just something about me that I don't like and I'm getting angry over this? All right, we all, I think, tend to get to a point where we get angry over things that we probably shouldn't be angry about. But again, getting out of control, that's where we have the problem. Any other thoughts?